All right, welcome to today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader, where we dive deep on everything leadership related. You know, we're now 5 episodes in, and I'm having a lot of fun with this because we get to talk about my passion, which is leadership. And as we talked about last episode, if you tuned in, we talked about some obstacles that get in the way from becoming a great leader. And we also talked about some ways that you can really take steps to learn leadership, because leadership is learnable. It's not one of those things you're just born with. So one of my favorite things to do is bring on great guests. And today I got a really great one for you. So we're privileged to have somebody on who's really accomplished a lot, a real good guy who I've met recently. And he's been in financial services for the last 20 years, very successful career, is president of a financial services firm, a very successful one. But beyond that, also does a lot of speaking engagements. He's recently written a book and published a book called Servant Advisorship that's doing very well. And he's also got a couple other really cool things going on. I'll let him tell you. He lives down in Florida with his wife and 2 kids, enjoying the nice warm weather. And I'd like to welcome Kris Bonocore to the show. So Kris, welcome.
Hey, John, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for joining us. So, Kris, I gave the audience a little bit of an idea of who you are today, but I thought what a cool thing to do would be to let's take it back a little bit. Why don't you tell us maybe who you were and how you got into what you're doing now, and tell us a story about Kris.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Let's see, where do I start? Grew up super poor kid outside of Philadelphia in South Jersey, for the most part. Mom was a substance abuser most of her life. Um, I, yeah, I'm just going to dive right into that, John, if that's okay.
Yeah.
um, uh, I decided to, at 16, take it upon myself um, to leave at 16 because of how abusive the situation was. I did have 3 siblings. We had 4 kids, if you will, from 3 fathers. So I was the oldest. My leaving was I guess challenging, to say the least, for my siblings when I decided to leave and not return home. So I guess that's where I got started. Does that does that
Wow,
help?
man, that does. Geez, wow. What one heck of a background. So you left at 16. I mean, what was that? I just think of myself when I was 16, and wow, I just was not ready for the world and me taking on the world. How tell us about that? How was that transition?
Yeah, none of us are. So you're not alone in that regard.
Yeah.
Um, not, um, However, I always knew, even at an even younger age, that um, I wanted to take control of my life. So at that moment, I did, and I went and I stayed with a bunch of friends and different family members and so forth, and then an uncle actually ended up getting custody of me through a series of legal proceedings, and took custody of me for about 18 months until I graduated high school. Um, and yeah, so it was, I moved from where I was to the Philadelphia suburbs, out in Pennsylvania, and much bigger school, different environment, different kids. It felt like then, and even looking back, because you might say, well, kids are kids, but just different type of population of kids. So yeah, so that's kind of what it was like trying to fit into this gigantic school and in the middle of the year.
Wow, that's got to be an unbelievably uncomfortable thing. So you left your siblings were they stayed with your mom, is that right? And you left on your own?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. They stayed back, and yeah. Look, they resented me for years. In fact, a couple of them didn't even speak with me for a couple of years because it was kind of like, you left me, um, and that was tough. It was tough because I was always kind of the protector, and at some point I decided I just had to take care of me. I don't know that looking back I would have done it any differently, um, but yeah, they stayed back, and I even said, do you want to come with me? Um,
How old were they
Thinking
at
about
that
it.
time?
So my brother was 2 years younger, is 2 years younger, and then brother and sister were um, 8 and 6 years different than I in age. So so it was, the younger ones certainly probably weren't going anywhere. Plus, their father was there, and um, but my brother, the one's 2 years difference, he made a choice not to not to leave.
So, and we don't have to go. You don't have to answer this as openly as you've told us so far. But what was there some kind of triggering event? I mean, what happened at 16 that that pushed you to take that step and move out?
So it was a series. Yeah, there are no sacred cows. You ask me anything. It was a series of events. It just I would say that it continued to escalate um, over and over and over again through over the course of weeks and probably months, where I became. I guess I look back and I became defiant to the point where I almost forced a reason to leave. And what I mean by that is nothing bad, but I didn't do anything bad, but I would just kind of instigate. Uh, and um, I'm trying to think back. So the reason I'm hesitating, not because it's emotional, but because I'm trying to think back. But the cops came because my mom had beaten us all pretty good, and um, they left. And then I think, if I recall, it was the next night where kind of things flared up again, and we all eventually went to bed. And I said, that's it, I'm out, and I left. And when everyone was asleep, and I never went back.
Wow. So they didn't even know it. You just left in the middle of the night.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
So when you look back, was that? I mean, had you not? You basically felt you had to get out of there if you were going to live the life you wanted to live. It sounded like you knew this was something you had to do. What do you think? If you didn't do that, had you stayed, what would your life have been like, do you think?
It's a great question, because I always think about what if this, what if that, and there's so many different twists and turns in my life, because there's a whole other aspect we can get into, and I could tell you for a while about how I eventually met my father at 38, and so what would life have been like if I had been with him, known him, and if I had stayed in the house. I really believe that I would have um, gone a similar path. It wouldn't have been the exact path, because certain things probably would have held me back, but I still would have done something where I pursued the vision that I had for my life. And in the book you mentioned that I wrote, I talk about vision and vision casting and creation. And at the youngest of ages, I had this vision for what I wanted my life to be like. And it was so vivid and so strong that I just can't imagine um, being much different than I am today, unless it was just greater and grander.
So what was that vision? Was that vision what you are living now, or was it different?
No, I think to my philosophy on visions is, you're never going to get exactly to it. I equate it to isotopes, as if you know your
you're,
geometry,
you're taking me
right?
back, man. You gave
Yeah,
me
yeah.
chills thinking about
You,
my geometry classes.
you,
Nightmares.
you get as close to it without touching it, right? But and that's how I equate it in the book, and it's uh, it's not exactly, but it's darn close, and I continue to pursue that future version of me um, with each day that passes. So,
So take us back. So you're 16. You
mhm.
leave. You ultimately stay with friends. Your uncle then takes custody of you. You start in a new school. I mean, tell us what's going through your mind at that point. Like that's an incredible amount of change suddenly.
Yeah, it's like what do I do? Who am I? What do I do? Um, how do I fit in? I went from a small school to this kind of gigantic school. It was I think it was 3,200 students at the time, with amongst three grades. So it was pretty big school. And and then my aunt and uncle were still are great people, but that was different too. It was different for him. It was different for his wife. It was for the kids. I have this 16-year-old just pop up in your life, and now he's living with you. So it was challenging to say the least, and keep it simple. But how do you get good grades? How do you make friends? Um, that's I don't know. It's kind of what it was like.
Yeah. So it's a whole new path of life. Now, were you still in touch with your mom and your siblings at that point, or did you just kind of put the blinders on and moved ahead?
Yeah, I was. I kept in touch with mom and the kids, and I would go back and visit. Um, I don't know, maybe once a month, once every other month or so. I would drive back down and visit them. So yeah, kept in touch. It was kind of strange at first, but then it became part of life. But then I guess that quickly became, I'm 18 and I'm working and um, off to college and so forth, and then I mean just everything evolved so quickly for me that I so let's see. I don't know how you want to take this, but so I finished school. I became a DJ. I was I went to Penn State. I met my wife, um, and during that time, my mom and one of my brothers passed. So I don't know how we want to weave that in, but that all became part of the story as well.
Mm. So what they passed at the same time, different times?
Different times, yeah.
Yeah.
So mom at 49, I believe I was 22 or 23. Sure I could do the math, but mom was 49. Basically overdose, septic shock. She kind of shut down, um, and that was Christmas Day 18 years ago. Um, and then my brother had contracted hepatitis C from my mom at birth. So all his life he never really treated it. So at 23, we had to get a new liver for him, a liver transplant, and we did. And unfortunately, it did not take. So mom had already passed by then. So I spent probably close to a year in the hospital with him and working through that. Um, and he eventually passed. So
Wow, man. I can't imagine. I'm sorry about what you've gone through. So what happened at that point with your other siblings? Did that bring you closer to them? Were you in contact with them?
yeah, for a period of time, it actually did bring me much closer. Always kept in touch with them. Um, it so yeah, brought me closer for sure.
Mhm.
Um, Today, I don't. We always pick up right where we left off, but I think we're kind of doing our own thing, so to speak. And they know that I'm here for them and that, I've helped them as much as possible along the way. Um, and yeah, but I wouldn't say we're extraordinarily close,
Hmm.
where we talk every day or every week. So,
Yeah.
but I'm here. I'm here for them.
So let me ask you this, Kris. So, a lot of times we can look back and we could say there were certain times where we felt like, okay, our life is now picking up and things are going to be okay. There's positive momentum. There might be just a certain event that kind of triggers us to feel like we're getting to that next level. What point in your life did you feel that? What actually happened?
Um, I think it was so there was a pivotal. There was probably two or three pivotal moments in my life. Um, Now that I think about it, there's probably three or four really, really pivotal moments in my life, or that helped pick up the momentum down the path that I was pursuing. And I think to answer your question, the one that put me on kind of the path I'm on today is um, I started to work on the floor of the stock exchange. And I had been at Penn State studying biology, frankly. And I did this internship on the floor of the stock exchange, which doesn't sound related, and it's not. But I um, earned the opportunity through actually a DJ gig that I did. Um, so took the role. It was kind of a summer internship for lack of uh, any better explanation. And I probably had three or so semesters left to graduate, and I called my wife at the time, um, who's my wife today, but I called Julie, and she I said, "Hey, I'm gonna change my major." She's like, "What do you mean you're going to change your major? You're gonna go off and you're gonna go to med school and you want to be a doctor?" I said, "Well, not anymore." I said, "I've fallen in love with this industry." And So I did. I changed my major to business, focusing on finance, and that was it. So I ended up accelerating my academic career at Penn State, and um, yeah, so I took, I don't know what it was, 20, 22, 24 credits at a time. Plus I had I was 21 at the time. I had a wife and a baby on the way, and I was DJing and I was working on the floor of the exchange.
That's
Um,
awesome, man.
it was a pretty
That's
wild
one heck
time.
of a life. So, what was it like working on the floor of the stock exchange? That's like one of those dream jobs for somebody in our industry, and not many people get to do it.
Oh man, it was so much fun. What a great time, a great kind of, I'm sure it helped build the foundation that I have today to some degree. Looking back, I mean, it was purely it was the options trading floor of the Philadelphia Stock Exchange. So, and if you think about the time frame it was in, it was I guess it was March or so of 2000.
Oh wow.
So I started in January of 2000, and I stayed there through I think April or May of 2000. So yeah, wild time, right? I saw kind of boom and bust all in a quarter.
That's
So
unbelievable. That probably would be the single time you would want if you were going to take a segment of time to be on the floor of the stock exchange. That's like probably the most exciting action drama film put together. That must have been amazing.
yeah, I saw some wild stuff. I look back on. I mean, gosh, fist fights, um,
Wow.
trash. Yeah, yeah, it was wild.
I remember that. I was a new advisor. Well, I wasn't, I was 5 years in because I'd started at 94, 95. So I came into the business like, 5 years of 20+% growth every single year. And I legitimately remember, it's kind of funny because you're bringing me back to this. I remember thinking, I remember dealing with clients that would come in And they would say to me as a financial advisor, listen, unless you can guarantee that I'm going to earn 30-40% a year, I'm not going to, why would I work with you? Because I mean, people were just, they were throwing darts at a dartboard, making all kinds of money. I remember people, I remember just that period of time. I remember sitting, getting ice cream, and there were like two 12-year-old kids talking about stocks. I mean, everybody was talking about it. And I remember in the late 90s, right before that, we even in the industry, we started to believe what everybody was believing. Like, okay, well, maybe this is a different stock market. Maybe the market does go up 20% a year, and maybe this is a good time to buy. It was crazy. And then obviously the bottom fell out in that time in spring of 2000. So wow, that just, you're taking me back, man. Crazy times.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me about how you got in. So you after college, tell us a little bit about how you progressed from there and ultimately got into what you're doing.
Sure. So I was on the floor of the exchange. I remember wanting to get into an office, into um, I knew I didn't want to trade options. While it was intriguing, and I even today I still love options, it was an opportunity for me, but I knew it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. Frankly, leadership had always intrigued me, even again as a young kid. But so I wanted to pursue a path that wasn't just about um, really, frankly, just making the money. So um, I I sent out, to this day I don't know how many, but I sent out probably 40 or 50 or 60 um, resumes. At that time, I had really nothing of any good substance to put on my resume, but I created this resume and I sent it out to um, countless. It had to be 50 or so brokerage firms that today aren't even in existence. Um, and I sent it out, and I would follow up with phone calls. Just I was offering to work as an intern for free um, anywhere I could. And as luck would have it, right around the corner from me, there was a Morgan Stanley office, and this senior vice president there um, finally took took my call after I don't know how many times I tried calling and following up, and he just said, "Hey, I'll take you out to lunch." And he had this large practice and this team he had built, and took me out to lunch, and he just said, "Look, I'll hire you. I'll bring you on for $10 an hour." And I was just delighted. I couldn't believe it. Here,
Got your foot
no
in the door.
experience. It was
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
it was great. I would have done it for free, and I had a baby on the way, and $10 an hour was cool. In addition to the DJ income, but I was still in school at the time. So anyway, I stayed there a year, learned a ton from him and the team, and really solidified my affinity for the industry. And um, I guess at 22, then I decided I wanted to become a broker. It was time, um, and I went and heard that Merrill Lynch had been hiring. And so I did. So I interviewed, I got the role, took my Series 7 and accompanying licenses, passed all that, and became a gigantic air quotes broker at 22. Um, and uh, and there it was. I was kind of on my way from that point.
So I want to talk in a few minutes about how you got into leadership. But you made a comment a couple minutes ago. You said leadership always intrigued you. What always intrigued you about it?
It was about others, and it was being able to influence and have an impact on others. So that was it. So affecting or influencing other people, and as I look back, as I get older and I continue to reflect in my life, I think it was about um, being the protector, if you will. Simon Sinek says something along the lines of taking care of those in your care as a leader. And as I look back, given the situation that I came from, I was the kind of leader and protector for my younger siblings in the situation we were in, and I think that's probably at the core of what intrigued me about it the most.
Mm. So that was really, you look back on your first experience as a leader, really, with your siblings.
Sure, yeah, for sure. And I don't think I realized that until maybe the last couple of years, as my life continues to evolve, and I've had a couple more interesting events. But yeah, that probably was the case.
Well, it's interesting because, and a lot of people don't understand that about what leadership is. They think about, okay, a leader is somebody in a formal role and has a title, but that's not the case. It's really anybody that has influence on someone. So influences your thoughts or your behaviors or anything. And that's exactly what you did. Now, what about on the other side? Was there somebody in your life that you think had the biggest influence on you and was a leader in essence to you? And who would that be?
Yeah, there were a lot of leaders because there's a lot of different forms of leadership and types of leaders. So there were, um, as with anyone, I had a number of leaders, and I'm not sure that all of those leaders were um, were the leaders that I wanted to be. So you could be a leader and have a negative impact upon people or perhaps those in your care. So yeah, I mean there were a lot of leaders along the way, none of which I would say influenced who I want to be. However, they certainly influenced who I didn't want to be. So the one of the most influential leaders that I've ever come in contact with or had the pleasure and the honor of working alongside was a gentleman by the name of John, who was one of the C-level um, executives at the firm, one of the firms that I came from. So kind of took me under his wing and taught me a lot of what I know today about good leadership and who I want to be as a leader. I still carry with me today a lot of the lessons that he bestowed upon me, and I'll send him an email or text him or even put some things in the book
Mhm.
about him, not necessarily by name, but just hey, this continues to influence me day to day.
What's an example of maybe one or two things, lessons that you learned from him or things that you admire most about him as a leader?
Well, first and foremost, it's all about um, people, and excuse me, it's about the people once again, kind of in your care, and they're the people that you have to not only take care of but influence and make a difference with, so that they can in turn make a difference with others. So that's one. Um, and the other, probably most important, is perspective. So you hear things like, well, there's two sides of the story or three sides to the story, um, but having full perspective on any given situation is so critically important, so that you can see it not only from your own viewpoint but others' viewpoint as well.
That's such good advice. I think so many leaders miss that, right? And both of those points. I mean, there's a lot of leaders, and we've all had interactions with leaders that, and it's very transparent, right? They're about them or about the result, or they're about something that ties ultimately to them. And then you get people like John or other people that might have had great impacts on you, where it's about the people that they're leading and they're really authentic, right? And most people don't look at things, most leaders don't look at things, take the effort to look at things from multiple perspectives. And that helps you ultimately make better decisions too. And it also, so the tough thing as a leader, sometimes you've got to make decisions that are not popular. They're the right decision, but they're not popular. And I've found in my own experiences and in talking to great leaders that looking at things from a different perspective can, at least, it may sometimes change the decision, but even if it doesn't, it will help you communicate and sometimes lead those individuals different when you look at it from their perspective, right? You can help them understand a decision that might not have been popular, but ultimately was the right one, right?
Yeah, and it's important not only what they see and what they want, but also where they're coming from or where they came from. Knowing those that piece of it is so important too, because you know why they might be responding to something the way that they are, um, versus saying, well, that's ridiculous. Why would you have that thought, or why would you ever do that in that situation? Well, it's like knowing my story, right? So those who know my story know why I kind of do the things I do or am the way I am. I'm extraordinarily relentless and tenacious, um, and all for good, but not all. It's not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think knowing that where they came from is really really important, because then kind of how to handle them.
Well, my guess is also, one of the things that you learned really early was the benefits of stepping outside your comfort zone, which, most people, not just leaders, but most people don't do. You did it in an early age, and wow, stepped outside a huge comfort zone, and you saw the benefits of that. So that probably, my guess is that kind of wired you to realize the importance of doing that, because you got rewarded by doing that. I'd love your comments on that. And then also, how important is that in leadership, as a leader stepping outside your comfort zone and also leading others to do that?
Um, yeah, so I always say, and I'm sure I know I didn't make it up, but the only magic that exists happens outside of your comfort zone. So there's actually a little diagram that goes with that. But um, in order to better yourself and push yourself and be um, be the person you want to be, you have to live outside your comfort zone, and that is so much easier said than done. Um, in 10 minutes, I'll probably go back to, just inherently, naturally go back to my comfort zone, whether I'm sharing my story on your show, or I go and interact with others. It's just where we all kind of fall back to. But encouraging others um, to get outside of that zone is, and live outside that zone and stay outside that zone, is where great magic occurs. So by doing it yourself first, you know what it takes, you know what it feels like, and you know what it can produce. So only then can you influence others to do the same.
Mhm.
So my advice to, well, myself and others is, um, figure it out yourself first, and then once you do, get others to do the same, so that they can in turn better themselves and influence others to do it.
Yeah, my guess is, and you get used to the self-talk. You get used to what goes on in your head when you step outside your comfort zone, which helps you manage that a little bit better. Okay, hey, here's how I'm going to feel. Here's what I'm going to end up saying to myself, and here's how I got to combat that to keep myself on the right path.
Yeah, no one talks to you more than you.
Right. I love that too. Magic happens outside your comfort zone. I love that. That's great, man. So tell us about what was the first formal leadership position? You started as a broker. When did you get into any kind of formal leader position?
I guess the first was when I went to the next company and I became an independent advisor, and I brought on someone to really an assistant to work alongside me, and I would say that that was my first real experience with leadership,
And
and
what was that like?
um, it, well, it depends who you ask, me or her. Um, but she'll tell you today. We're very close. She's really one of my most dear friends today. We'll very likely work together again at some point in the not too distant future. So our relationship today is really, really strong. She's like a sister to me. But she'd be the first to tell you that she was looking for a job to leave me because because of how I guess intense or tenacious I was, um, and uh, and it was yeah. I had no idea what I was doing, but my goals and were so strong that I almost probably didn't even care about what it was that she wanted or who she was. So um, it by no means did I understand leadership then the way that I do today. Um, and we had some heart to hearts over the years, and we got to understand each other, and I got to be respectful of myself and her and others, and um, yeah, it turned into a wonderful relationship, wonderful working relationship. I could have never built the practice that I did without her, and we were just talking last night, and she'll, like I said, very likely come work with me again in the not too distant future.
That's great. So what did that teach you? That it sounds like you almost lost her at one point. What did you learn about leadership with her?
Yeah, that it's that other people matter, and I know that sounds perhaps redundant or overly simple, but it's about other people. It's not about what you want, and you have to get in order to get where you want to be. You've got it's almost like reverse psychology. You have to take care of others, not yourself. Um, it's almost like the path to prosperity is not in um, saving or keeping or having a scarcity mindset. It's about giving and doing for others. So that's really what it taught me. And I'm sorry she had to take the brunt of my learning, but that's what it taught me.
So let me ask you this, Kris. A lot of people that are listening are wanting to become better leaders, and I've been a big believer that you can do things that will exponentially increase your speed of development. And some people take steps to do that. Some people don't. What are some ways that somebody can learn leadership?
Two ways. One, read. Two, do it. So by reading, I absolutely love not necessarily books on leadership, but books about people in leadership or who have had and held leadership roles, be they formal or informal. So I love biographies. I love um, uh, watching and listening and reading about how others have done it, the mistakes that they have made, and the successes that they've had. So I read relentlessly so as to continually learn. And then the other is in doing. So by doing, you put it all into practice, and you make mistakes. So there's no better teacher than mistakes, and I think it's just about getting outside your comfort zone, doing it, trying different things, um, and then you're learning it that way.
Any specific books that you'd recommend or authors?
Um, yeah, I just finished reading Phil Knight's Shoe Dog. Uh, Wonderful book. Um, Geez, I could name you tons of titles. Bob Iger's book, his newest book, The Ride of a Lifetime. Wonderful, wonderful book. One of the best books I've ever read. I love Roosevelt, um, uh, General Patton. Um, probably the best ones I've read there. John Adams was a wonderful book.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So, is there a any current or past leader that's high profile that you want to emulate? Anybody that you look at as a great example?
um, Richard Branson comes to mind as you asked the question,
I
and
love him. He is awesome.
yeah, he's just awesome, right? I mean, someone who's not only been successful in business, but is continually successful with people. And you look at his spirit and the way that he interacts with others, and he thinks about life and legacy and again people is just I don't know of too many better leaders or let's call it people that I want to emulate in leadership than Richard Branson.
Well, it's interesting. My favorite things about Richard Branson and stories, he and you may know this or probably do that he has dyslexia, and growing up, his teachers thought he was either dumb or lazy or both, and he suffered his whole life with it, and he now and it actually almost killed him. He tells a story about how he was skydiving and pulled the wrong cord. I guess there's a cord which doesn't really make sense, but there's a cord to, there's a rip cord and then there's a cord to release the backpack, and he actually pulled the one to release the backpack while he's up
Oh my
10,000
goodness,
feet.
I did not know that story.
But yeah, he actually credits that. He said, credits dyslexia. He says, what that helped me do. I wasn't able to really get in the weeds, so to speak, in the details. He said, I just couldn't. So it helped me. I just surrounded myself with people that could do it. And it helped me focus on the bigger picture stuff, which I'm like, wow, what a cool example of just how you take what might be perceived as a weakness and turn that into what he credits to be a strength. I mean, that's like just a fascinating perspective. But great leader. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And that kind of ties in with the idea that, you can't have success without failure, and you can't have triumphs without obstacles. So, um, I talk to my kids today. I mean, they've got a pretty good and relatively easy life, especially compared to how I grew up. And I try to tell them those stories. So it's a strange balance because you don't want to give them everything, but you don't want to take everything away from them, and you want to make them stronger, but you don't want to. So it's just this struggle, this continual struggle that I have. So I haven't figured that one out. I really don't want to use any of this time to give any parenting advice because it would be wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to continually balance that every day to
Mhm.
give them a little bit of hardship, but give them the good things that I've worked for too.
So let me ask you this, and this is this is based on our current environment, and somebody might listen to this podcast, years from now. So just to date stamp it, we're right now in the midst of coronavirus pandemic, and all kinds of things are happening. We've got market and economic uncertainty. The market's moving 1,000 points a day and has dropped from almost 30,000 down to 20,000, and in a rapid time. You've got all kinds of uncertainty with what the future holds, right? We've got restaurants closing down and gyms closing down, and everybody, staying put in their houses. So let's talk about leadership as it relates to that. How does a leader, when you're in a situation where even the leader does not, a job of a leader oftentimes is to see around the corner. and help people and guide them. But when the leader doesn't necessarily know, how do you operate in a situation like that when you're in times of really significant and severe uncertainty? What's the leader's role, and how do they deal with that?
So, um, I've actually been thinking through this a lot, and I've been talking through it a lot over the last couple of weeks, given the environment and the situation. And I think the first thing to know as the leader is that it's okay not to have all the right answers. It's okay to frankly say, I don't know. Um, I just don't know. So I think there's strength and there's confidence in saying I don't know, or and telling others that it's okay to say that. So I think that's really the most important thing because I don't know. I don't have answers as to whether or not the market is going to rebound or in a very short period of time. Do I fully believe long term? Of course, it's going to recover. Yes. Otherwise, it's the end of the world. In which case, none of this matters anyway. Um, but but I think acknowledging that you don't know, but believing in something, believing in the future, believing in yourselves, believing in America or people or unification, whatever it um, is something of strength.
Mhm.
So I think you can try to anticipate what lies ahead, help others navigate through it. Communication is so very important. It's you can't over communicate in this environment with your clients, with your people, with your peers, with perhaps those above you. You can't communicate too much. Um, and listening. So one thing I've done uh, recently is so we have everyone working from home. And what I asked a couple of folks to do is to stay connected with each other. So do kind of a daily huddle call. It's a 3 to 5 minute call probably about um, just what's on your minds and hearts. It may not be about work. It can be about work. It doesn't have to be about work. It probably shouldn't be about work, but it's, hey, what's going on in your community, especially if you have kind of a distributed model. What's going on in your neighborhood or your community, and what's on your mind and heart. What are your fears right now? So it's just a way to stay connected since you're not in the office. So a little bit of rambling there, but that's how I'm handling and encouraging others to handle this environment.
Well, I absolutely, I think you're spot on with that. I think a lot of leaders, when they are in times like this, first of all, it is so critical, the communication and visibility of a leader in times of uncertainty. And a lot of leaders feel, and this goes into the bucket of stepping outside your comfort zone, right? There's a lot of leaders that just feel like, hey, listen, if I don't have the answers, I don't know what to say. And then they opt to not say anything. Well, your point is so good. It's listen, your job is not to know the answer. You don't have them. But the communication piece is so critical. People look at leaders for that feeling of security. And even when the road is cloudy ahead and foggy and they don't know what's ahead, just that person that's there giving some sort of comfort or reassuring message and just allowing people to talk and speak and communicate, that's just so critical. So you're spot on with that. I'm glad you said that. So let me ask you this, Kris. So what's I know you've done a lot, you've accomplished a lot, and I know you're working on some things right now. So tell me a little bit about what's going on now and what's your priority, some of the things you're working on.
Sure. So I would say there's kind of two main professional buckets in my life right now. One is I'm president of an investment firm. So we're a firm that brings advisors from other channels and gives them the opportunity to be, if they're not already, an independent advisor. So advisors might leave the bank or brokerage channels for a variety of reasons. be it freedom or independence, autonomy, product selection. Frankly, some leave because they want a higher payout. Um, so maybe it's economic or financial reasons. Um, and that's what we do. So we help get them set up. We help bring them into business um, for themselves, not by themselves. And that's what we're focused on. And then we help them build out their practices organically once they're here.
That's great. It's a
So,
lot, it's a tough business, and a lot of advisors may be great potential advisors, but end up spending their time on the wrong things, or they just don't know how to do some of the things that really are behind the scenes sometimes, and the other stuff that goes into running a business. So it sounds like you provide a really good support system to help them focus on the things that are most important and not the stuff that they don't need to deal with.
for sure. Yeah. So
Awesome.
that's bucket one. The other is I wrote a book with the my underlying philosophy for being an advisor, and from that I am creating what I like to think of as a consulting firm for advisors. And it's not really a traditional consulting firm; it's actually more of a community. It's a community for um, enhancement of advisors. And I'm in the process of building that out through a series of experiences, conferences, masterminds, workshops, both online and in person, so that advisors, like-minded advisors, can belong to a community and um, better themselves and the client experience and the legacy that they want to leave.
So is the value for them as the advisor, they're learning from their peers and from that community? Is that what the purpose of it is?
Yeah, so I'd say they're going to learn in three different main ways. One is their peers. Two would be their industry experts. So we'll have just countless industry experts that are subject matter experts um, and and teach or educate. And then myself and my partner will also share our our knowledge and our experiences with the community.
Awesome. That's great. So if somebody wants to, well, first of all, if somebody wants to pick up your book, Servant Advisorship, how do they get a hold of it?
Yeah, Amazon would be probably the best way. You can get it on Kindle or paperback. Um, yeah.
Terrific. And how about information on the network that you have?
So we're in the process of building out the website and the brand and so forth. For now, they can go to theservantadvisor.com, and that's a website that's dedicated to the book and the philosophy, and what will eventually become the community.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Well, I could talk to you for another hour easily because there's so much that I'd still like to ask you, but we're running against the clock here. So let me just turn it back to you. Is there anything you want to make sure that you leave the audience with? Any messages, any things based maybe that we didn't even hit on?
The only thing I'd go back to that crosses my mind is, kind of what is leadership, um, and how can you be a better leader, especially as I think about this environment, as I look out the window and look at the computer and my phone and what's going on in the markets and so forth. But um, leadership is, in my opinion, the light. So be the light, be the change, be the leader that you want and need, or wanted and needed, so that folks that are in your care can get to where they want to be.
Awesome. I love that. Absolutely fantastic. Kris Bonocore, thank you, my friend. This has been a very enlightening, enjoyable, entertaining hour, man. I could, like I said, I could talk to you for another hour easily. And I hope that at some point you come back on and at least one more episode, if not two or three. So that good? Good game plan?
That sounds wonderful, John. Thank you very kindly for your time and your interest here.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining on today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader. Again, our goal is to bring to light some of the best learnings and have some of the best guests. You certainly got a ton of takeaways from Kris Bonocore today. Make sure you subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you get plugged in on all our future episodes, and be sure to like and comment, and be sure to share. Share with your friends, other people that are interested in learning about leadership. Thanks for joining, everybody. Have a great day.